Well, to order for the committee. I know there are several counselors that asked for this. I did particularly, especially with the upcoming contract renewal. I thought it was very important for every counselor to be able to have their questions answered and to specifically address the needs in the county and what we can afford. So in any case, who is presenting? And I apologize for not being there. In fact, I have two separate dog issues this morning myself that's keeping me at home. So I'm sorry I'm not there. But who are the presenters this morning?
We're going to collaborate on the presentation. So my name is Megan. I'm Vice President of Strategic Initiative.
And I'm Andrea Bruno. I'm the President of the Humane Society. So we'll be kind of co-presenting and then allowing additional staff that I'll introduce to you speak to a couple things as we go through our presentation.
Everybody hear us okay?
So I cannot, and I've got my speakers up 100%. Is there a way that you could have the microphone directly in front of you?
Is that better?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, great. So I won't be looking at the camera then. I might be looking away so that we can catch the microphone. Great. Am I okay to proceed?
Please do. And thank you so much for coming.
Well, thank you for having us. Again, I'm Andrea Bruno. I'm the President of the Humane Society. I've been with the Humane Society about 4 years, and we really appreciate this opportunity to come and meet with you and talk a little bit more about the sheltering contract that we've been together on for a number of years. We're up for renewal next year, and so we're looking forward to this discussion today. I wanted to make a couple of quick introductions before I start. So to my left, again, we have Megan Dennis, who's our Vice President of Strategic Initiatives. She works on all of our contracts and MOUs for the organization. Most of you have met her in your visits with us. Then to her left is Jennifer Rylander. She is our Vice President of Operations. So she really operationalizes the contract for us and handles all of our animal care and day-to-day shelter operations. You might be familiar with her last name and know her father. And then to her left is Cheryl Bateman. Cheryl Bateman is actually a volunteer. She's a board member and treasurer of our board and has been around a long, long time and understands these contracts and understands the role we play in the community. And then finally, Cass Schoenwald is our Vice President of Finance. So we brought her as well in case there are any questions that you'd want to pose to our finance team. So again, thank you for having us. It's been wonderful to get to know some of you over the last couple of weeks. Thank you for coming out to the shelter or meeting with us by Zoom so that we could talk more about the work we do in the community and really educate you on not only the sheltering contract that we have, but the extensive work we do even outside of that for our community and how that all plays together. So we have a short presentation today that we hope will answer a lot of your questions and kind of go a little deeper into the contract. But as we go, if there are things you want to hear more about or ask questions on, please feel free to join us. So with that, I will turn it over to Megan, and she'll kind of kick off talking about the contract itself.
Great. So I thought that I'm
not sure if it's an issue on your end. Are other counselors online hearing it cut out?
No, I'm hearing it just fine.
Okay, it must be on my end. I apologize. Go ahead.
okay. So I thought that I would start by just giving an overview of what our contracts are. So we don't have a municipal shelter in Clark County. So in order to fulfill this municipal service, the jurisdictions contract with HSSW to provide the services that I have listed. All of our services are the same across every jurisdiction. There are a few variances in our contracts, but that is only based on the municipal code for that particular area. Our services, I'll just quickly read through them. We provide animal intake and sheltering for strays, protective custody and forensic support during those neglect or abuse cases, medical care, vaccinations, spay, neuter, animal husbandry, behavior support and enrichment, pathway planning for animals. So just a quick definition of that, because this may be a new term. Pathway planning is essentially the process of actively tracking and guiding each animal's shelter stay from intake to outcome. So as soon as they come into our system, we're already planning for their outcome. This allows us to have as short of a length of stay as possible and to use our resources wisely. TNR and SNR, and we provide DOA and wildlife disposal. So we collaborate with CCAC. So we're essentially an extension of the work that they're doing in the field and out in our community. When an officer responds to a call for stray, neglected, dangerous, whatever the call may be, they then determine what the best path forward is for that animal. So in the cases where the animal needs to be impounded, that's where our work begins. We essentially, work in tandem with them to provide the seamless animal service in our community. There are a lot of ways that animal control and HSSW work together to either mitigate animal intake or, in necessary cases, provide a safe haven for those animals. Jen Rylander actually has a recent story of how we worked with CCAC that I just learned about yesterday, and I asked her to share.
Sure. So just a quick synopsis of what we did. On August 22nd, Clark County Animal Protection and Control contacted us to accompany them to a residence that they had received phone calls about, and there was concern around the state of the residence and that there were many cats, and there were concerns around the medical state of the cats. So they reached out to us, asked if we could send some staff with them to kind of assess the situation, meet with the owners, and how can we find a resolution. So we sent 2 of our staff members along with 3 officers out to this residence to do an assessment and see what could we offer. Do we have to bring these animals in? How can we help? How can we provide resources? Do they need spay and neuter assistance so they can help stop the continued breeding of the cats on the residence? Visually, we could see about 40 cats, 50 cats, which meant that there were likely 80 to 90 cats on the property. And between discussions with our shelter staff and animal control with the 2 owners on the property, we came to the resolution, and the owners decided, you know what, we need your help. Can you take the cats? Can you take them today? And we said yes, absolutely. And so it was a joint effort between animal control and our staff to gather these cats up, to get them in crates, to bring them over in shifts of about 10 to 15 at a time to the shelter to get these cats the medical care that they needed. And I think that's really a great example of the best case scenario. These cats were surrendered to animal control in the field, which means that we didn't have to hold them. We were willing to work with them, animal control and the Humane Society, because we knew that they were trying their best. They had the best of intentions. They loved these cats. So instead of seizing them and going through a case and prosecuting, we said surrender them to us. That'll allow us to move them through quickly. That'll save, cost on the back end from having to hold them. The county won't have to pay extended length of stay, and we can find outcomes quickly for these cats. So we ended up taking in 83 cats from that home that day. And we ended up getting them the medical care they needed, making some, hard decisions on some of the cats that we were unable to support in the way they needed. And the rest of the cats have gone up for adoption or gone out to other partner shelters where they can go up for adoption and find a home. So I think that was a great example of the work we've been doing. And a great example, I think, of the work we've been doing over the last year in collaboration with Donna and Animal Control. I think it speaks to the wonderful relationship that we've been able to foster and grow over the last year in particular.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. So, when an officer goes out into the field and whenever we're collaborating with them, a couple of things can happen. One, they determine, no, we don't need to seize these animals. They don't meet the, ordinance or statute. They are trying their best, and there's ways that we can support them. So HSSW could come in and we can say, look, the animals are going to stay in their home. Most of them or all of them will stay. We're going to help support them by providing vaccines, spay, neuter, whatever it might be to help keep the animals in their home. The other might be, no, this is going to require a seizure, in which case that is a very heavy resource drain onto both Clark County and HSSW because we're holding the animals all the way through the end of the court case. Clark County is working to prosecute, and there's a lot of things that go along with that. This really was the best case scenario because we went in there, we went together, we had a conversation with the owner. They did not need to be prosecuted. They were overwhelmed. So yes, the animals were in need of medical care, but this was simply just a case of people who had gotten in over their heads and they needed help and support. So they surrendered the animals. They surrendered ownership to us, which means that we did not have to hold them for any period of time. We could immediately provide whatever medical needs they needed and move them through our system. And animal control's work was essentially then done after that. So they took all of the animals from the home, they gave us the ACRs or their animal control reports, and then they were done. There wasn't this long, lengthy case that they had to follow up on. So that's how we work together in the community. And like Jen said, this has been an evolution over several years of us working together. So I'm really proud of the partnership that we have and the work that we do together.
Great. Thank you, Megan. So why Humane Society for Southwest Washington as a partner? I think there's a couple of things that I want to highlight on the presentation. One is that we really, in this community, have built a top-tier shelter. This has been the work of volunteers in the community and our partnership with the jurisdictions to really build what is now considered a top-tier shelter in the country. We are in collaboration constantly with Oregon Humane and other shelters throughout the country. We are often asked to speak on programs and things that we have done here. And so it's something that I hope we're all proud of, that along with the board and the committees that have worked so hard to fundraise and provide a top-notch shelter, also we really have top programming and are seen as really experts in animal welfare in this community. We're really the central hub for animal welfare. So there are a lot of things going on and a lot of things that we do and resources we provide to the community. And I think that speaks to our ability, and I think you can hear just the expertise that we have in the room here on how we approach and handle our relationship with animal control and our relationship with the community and needs of animals. We've done a lot of work on reducing the animal population, specifically cat population. So we are not just sitting in a reactive posture waiting for animals to come to the shelter. We have a lot of programs in place that are in partnership with animal control, like you heard about, also outside of these contracts that are donor funded to try to prevent animals from coming to us in the first place or needing animal control, or needing a surrender, or needing some kind of a case that develops like we just talked about. So we have a large investment in what we call community-centric sheltering, really trying to get outside of the four walls of this reactive, having animals come to us, to what resources, support, and education can we provide in our community to keep people and pets together, to mitigate needing the shelter, and really then saving all of us money, but also keeping animals where they belong, with people by and large that love them. So we are doing a lot of innovative and creative work on that front and have a number of things coming in the next year, including our mobile clinic that just launched that many of you saw, and also a brick and mortar community clinic that we will be opening next summer in the Hazeldale area that will provide low-cost veterinary care to income-qualifying families. That is another big burden for people. We believe pet ownership should be something everyone can enjoy, and we think by providing these additional services will allow people to own a pet, keep a pet, and keep animals out of the shelter. We have the infrastructure built. We have a beautiful shelter that has the capacity that is appropriate for this community size. And there's really no need to build another one or build a municipal one. We think that we as a private organization are doing a really good job of managing this work as experts that have learned a lot over the last 100+ years of our history, and that we have the expertise to continue this contract and be the central hub so it is smooth and clear for our community where to go when they need help with their animals. And then lastly, I want to highlight something that I've talked to several of you about is we play a really important role with the people as well as the animals. So obviously our expertise is in the work we do with animals, and that will always be the case. But there are people attached to those animals. And so when an animal comes to us, whether it's the case you just heard about, or somebody that needs to surrender, or somebody that just comes to us because they're not sure how to take care of a medical situation or feed their cat. we are able to identify some of the human needs that might be the barriers to them keeping that animal, and we are building programs outside of the contract to fund and support that work so that we can connect them to the human organizations that can support them. So when we see someone that has a mental health issue or a food insecurity or housing issue, we aren't going to solve those, but we build trust because of the work we do with our animals. So we want to connect them to the resource that's available in our community to maybe help them with that. And maybe because of that, that animal can stay with them and out of the shelter. So we're doing some innovative work around that, and I think we want people to know that, yes, our core competency is animals, and that's our core mission and what we do, but we also have a slice of the safety net in this community for the humans that we interact with as well. The next thing I want to talk about is on page, they're not numbered, but the next slide called Donor Supported Gap for Clark County. We've talked about this in our individual tours and meetings over the last number of weeks, but I just wanted to explain this again, that for the history of the contract as far back as they go, probably 15, 20 years, the Humane Society has subsidized these contracts with donor funding. And so we put together a really simple table that shows you 4 years of example of what that looks like. So you can see in 2020, we were charging $255 per animal. The cost was $498, or a gap of $243 that we have been fundraising to support through independent donors and grants. And then in 2023, we were charging $290. The cost has gone up to $672, or a gap of $382. So what we're going to be talking about today, I know is a little bit difficult, but we can no longer sustain supporting this contract in the way that we have. We really need to get your buy-in and support to come closer to the true cost of the service we're providing for the county. And so Megan's going to talk to you a little bit more about the details of that and what that will entail. But I hope this explains a little bit about what has been going on. And quite honestly, it's just with the cost increases and what it's costing us to do this work, we can't continue to put this on the back of our donors, and it's just not sustainable anymore. So why are the costs increasing? That's the million-dollar question, right? Well, I don't think it's any mystery. We're all, as business owners and citizens and a county, well aware that things are costing more. Inflation is up significantly in the last 4 to 5 years. The minimum wage increases every year impact us as well, and every time there's a wage increase, we have a lot of entry-level employees that do animal care and things like that. Those rates go up, and then we have to compress and give increases to their supervisors and other positions so that it's equitable across the spectrum of our staffing plan. Utilities have gone up 20% for us in the last few years, and this work takes a lot of utilities. It takes a lot of water and chemicals and things like that to keep the building safe and clean. Cost of food supplies and medications are up as much as 50%. Medical benefits, last year alone, our medical rates increased 15%. I think we can all understand that those are things a bit out of our control. We are constantly negotiating and trying to do the best we can while still keeping benefits affordable and accessible to our staff. We've had to add a few staff since COVID that specialize in dog behavior specifically. The animals we are seeing in the shelter post-COVID are not the same as we were seeing before the pandemic. Dogs in particular are coming with more behavior issues, more medical needs, and they're more challenging. And so to get them down a positive path and to have a good outcome, we're doing more intervention and support in the shelter with those dogs than we've ever had to do in the past. So we've had to hire a few people that specialize in behavior and support for these animals so that we can get them into loving homes. Higher volume of kittens post-pandemic. We've just seen lots of cats and kittens. There's a lot of theories on that. Probably us and every vet and every other organization was shut down to some level during COVID and weren't able to do the volume of spay-neuter that we were doing. I'm happy to tell you we are back up and we are investing more and more in that, including the mobile clinic. So we hope over time that we can get back and that under control. But we have seen high volume of kittens being born in the community. You know, Megan may touch on this, but I would say too, we do a lot of education and intervention at the counter at our intake area to try to prevent people from just bringing cats and bringing kittens in. Many times it's better to keep them in the field, and we do a lot of education and provide resources. And if we can, we try to get them to put them back where they found them, where we think they'll have a better outcome than the shelter. So we are doing a lot of work to try to not just take every cat and kitten that comes to our door in. Security, I don't think this is a surprise to anyone. Our lost and found redemption intake area can be a very volatile area, as you can imagine. We are really representing you and the city and their jurisdictions when people are coming to reclaim a pet. That is many times a very emotional time for someone, be it that they can't afford the redemption fee and they know their dog or cat is behind the counter somewhere, or they have an animal that has been seized by animal control and maybe there are some fees along with some expectations they have to meet in order to reclaim that pet. That can be very emotional for people. So we do, our folks get threatened regularly. We have the police out on a fairly regular basis because of combative situations. So we have had to hire some security to ensure that our staff and the animals are safe as we do this work. Though our facility is beautiful and you all saw it, and we take really good care of it, we invest to make sure that it is well taken care of and we don't have deferred maintenance that will be more costly down the road. But it is now a 16-year-old building, so there are some things that as they age, we need to replace washers and dryers, and we do lots of laundry over there. We have HVAC units that are aging. There are just costs to a building that starts to age and to keep it up to make sure that we can have the lowest impact on the cost possible. And then, as you heard in this example, this year alone we have had 4 large-scale cases from different jurisdictions, so we are seeing some large-scale cases that really put a heavy one-time kind of burden on us to manage, 86 cats at one time. That is not a typical intake day, and that day happened to end up being 107 cats because of other separate cases and things that came in. So those things are putting more pressure on the need for temporary higher volume in supplies, crate, things to manage those kinds of situations.
Okay, I'm going to go over our cost of care on the next slide. So several of you have asked for kind of the buckets, what goes into this cost of care. So I provided a more detailed breakdown where you can see kind of our total budget and our total buckets in your packet, but this is a high-level overview of that. So the total number here, the $3.7 million, is divided by our total live intake for that year, and that's how we get to this average cost of care. So, like I said, on this slide right here, it just shows things that are included. There's another $4+ million that's in our budget and our expenses every year that's not included. Those are all 100% donor funded. The cost of care, this number here, is traditionally what has been used as a baseline for our contracts. But like Andrea said, since the inception of these contracts, we've always taken a significant loss. I'm going to go over on the next slide the commonly used contract model. So our current contract model is a per animal contract. So we bill based on the number of animals that we take in. The problem with this is that it's pretty admin heavy. There are significant billing fluctuations. So for example, in January, you could get a $20,000 bill because we have fewer intakes. And then sometime in the summer or late fall, it's closer to $60,000 to $80,000. So significant billing fluctuations. Discrepancies from officers or intake forms can lead to inaccurate billing. There's also been some border street disputes where an animal is found at an intersection. Well, guess what? Half that intersection is on Clark County, and then half of it is City of Vancouver, and neither wants to take responsibility for that animal. Clark County is currently the only remaining jurisdiction that's still on this per animal model because of all of these issues that we listed. Everyone else has transitioned to this flat fee. The other popular model, though, is a per capita model. So this is something really commonly used in this area and across the United States. The national average in 2023 was $9 to $15 per capita. So I got this information from Best Friends Animal Society. They collect hundreds of contracts and data, and all of this comes from shelters and other jurisdictions or municipalities to get this average per capita. So if we take the low end of this average, the cost for animal sheltering alone, because again, this is just animal sheltering, we're not including animal control in this, this is not what this number is $2.1 million per year for Clark County. There are a lot of benefits to this. It creates predictability and supports additional services as Clark County grows. We do understand, though, that $2.1 million would be a big ask for the county. So what we're proposing is this flat fee model that all of our other jurisdictions are currently on. The flat fee model is based on the projected volume of what we think we're going to take in over our 3-year contract term, and then the average of our cost of care. So there's, again, a detailed breakdown of how I got to some of these numbers based on our 3-year average over 2021 and 2023. You can see that in the packet that I sent you. There's a little bit of risk for both sides because, you know, these projected numbers that we have, they could be significantly higher or lower, in which case it's going to, you know, be a higher cost to us, or we didn't take in as many as expected, so you're still going to pay the flat fee. But it is definitely easier to bill, and there's lower admin cost. So I also included in here on the next slide the numbers and what you can expect to see on our official proposal. So again, I have the breakdown in there. This is based on 2021 through 2023 numbers with just a 10% increase in cats, because that's what we're seeing. Like Andrea said, we're seeing more cats and kittens coming in throughout the years. We do think that, you know, hopefully with all of the work that we're doing, that's the donor-funded work for spay, neuter, and getting out into the community, vaccinating, you know, helping people stay with their pets and vaccinate and alter their pets, that hopefully this will slow down the intake. 2025 and 2026 numbers that I have on here, the per animal charge, those have all been adopted by the jurisdictions with contracts that extend into those years. So this would be our first contract that has 2027 included. So this is a new number. This new number you'll see is based on our average cost of care for 2023. So obviously, you know, we love the partnership that we have with Clark County. We truly value the work that we do for the people and pets in our community. We just cannot continue to do this work at such a loss. So we need to get to this number in 2027, but like I said, we've included the slow ramp up, so it's not coming next year. We just need to get there by 27. That's the end of our presentation. So obviously we'll open it up to any questions that you all have about the numbers, about our partnership, anything we can answer for you.
Okay, so thank you very much. I'll start. I do have a couple of observations and questions mixed in. First is disclosure. I've used your services on 192nd. I adopted a pet there. And I also had, with my son, he had his cat kidnapped and ultimately recovered through the Humane Society. So I want to emphasize, and I'm assuming most of the counselors have been out there at least once or more. You know, this is a top tier organization. It's beautifully run, and a measure of our sophistication in the county is how we care for our vulnerable, whether it's the elderly or young or our domestic animal population. And I think we should take a lot of pride in what the Humane Society is doing on 192nd. So we have to do it. And right now we don't have any alternatives. Obviously, one of the surprises I saw was the need for security. And and I looked in your packet to see if there was a separate line item for what you're now spending on security. Do you have that figure available? And because I'm wondering if there's some alternative. I mean, I know how volatile the situations are that you just explained, but I'm wondering if we can do something else. I mean, even our family court, which is equally as volatile, doesn't have full-time security like you just described.
Yeah, and it's not full-time security. It is really very passive, if anything. It is, it's about $1,000 a month, but it is passive Metro protection who comes through and they monitor a parking lot several times a day. And they're available within, 3 to 5 minutes to be on site should we have a need. So they are not sitting full-time.
So it's a de minimis cost. It's about $12,000 per year for the entire security contract.
That $12,000 is also shared between other departments. We have a retail location that
Yeah,
they
so
also
big eye opener
work with.
for us is, I'm sorry, breaking up. The biggest eye opener for us is, $290 charge to the county in 2023, and then a proposed $493 in 2025. It's such a huge jump. I mean, it's more than 50%. I didn't do the math. I think it's closer to 70% increase. And obviously everything costs more out in the community, where it's just the sticker shock. And I'm wondering if there's some alternatives to phasing that increase in over time while still looking for efficiencies for the operation. It's just such a single year jump. I mean, we've had to raise rates in different ways, but we've always tried to phase it in over a number of years for our public to absorb. I'm wondering if you could comment on that.
Yeah, absolutely. So a couple of things. One, the reason why it's such a big jump is because during our last contract negotiation, we could not get to a higher rate. So this was the rate that was settled on, was between a $5 and a $15 increase year over year. The year over year increase is about $71.50. So so that's the reason why, because you guys are already so far behind. This is all that you would come up to during the last negotiations, and unfortunately, it was a really the relationship back then between HSSW and it seems the counselors, that whole process was not great. So that's why the rates are jumping, is because you're already so far behind. Unfortunately, we have made a commitment to the other jurisdictions, so City of Vancouver, the other smaller jurisdictions, Battleground, Ridgefield, La Center, Camas, Washougal, that already have adopted the rates. We have made a commitment to them that we are going to charge the same rates for everyone. So we couldn't charge the rate of $493 and then $560 to all of the other jurisdictions except Clark County. So we have to charge those rates for those years.
Did you put that in their contract? That it'll be that the county would pay the same exact rate?
No, it's not in their contract, but we did make a commitment to them.
We made a commitment.
Go ahead. Other counselor questions?
I have a question, Chair.
Please go ahead.
I like the chair. It's such a huge jump from one period to the next. I mean, when I'm looking at contracts for federal contracts and we're looking at the CPI, the Consumer Price Index standards, and looking at what a potential increase could be, I mean, this is extremely substantial percentage wise. I mean, it's not gradual at all. I mean, how are the other jurisdictions dealing with this, and what are some of their opinions on this?
I mean, they signed it. Obviously, it was a jump for them, but they understood that the costs were rising and they understood why. So, it really wasn't a difficult process. I'm sure that, for City of Vancouver, that's the most comparable for you all. If you don't have contacts there, I'm happy to put you in contact with them if that would be helpful in any way.
I've actually talked to the city.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry,
Yeah.
Kathleen.
No, I was just sharing that I actually did talk to the city manager about the contract.
Does any of this pricing include the mobile services?
Nope. No. None of the community work that we do outside of the specific scope of the sheltering contract is part of our cost per care.
So in the more detailed cost of care breakdown that I included in your packet, you can see the, whenever we talk about animal care, we're talking about direct animal care. So those animals that are actually in our shelter, so they have an intake. So those are live intakes. Those are animals that are coming in from the community via strays, owner surrenders, you know, all of the different ways that we take in animals. So that's what the direct animal care costs are. Everything else you can see in our budget that's over $4 million that's not included in this is our community work. So there's a little bit more detail in there.
Yeah, and to be clear, we will still be subsidizing a portion of this, even with these new rates. I know it's a big jump. The biggest two factors are that, like Megan said, the contract was behind and we were subsidizing a significant amount through this year. And number two, yes, we've added security in a few positions to deal with a few situations that are new to us post-pandemic, but the biggest cost is labor. I mean, the cost of hiring people and being competitive and keeping people employed, I think we all know that is our greatest challenge. And so the cost to hire and keep people has grown significantly.
That's all for me.
Sue, Marshall, Karen, Glenn, do you have questions?
We have a further response. Go ahead.
Oh, please,
I
go
just
ahead.
wanted to point out a couple of key things. And first, I will say that I've been with the Humane Society now for about 2 months, so I've had just long enough to dig in and kind of have a really decent understanding. I assisted Megan with putting together these numbers, and I had questions when we started this process because a couple of things jumped out at me. And one of the major things that jumps out at me, if you look at the detailed costs, the ones that include what we're charging for, you know, the cost of animal care versus what we are not, you'll see a line item under the not included in per animal average that includes $800,000 of admin, program, and fundraising expenses. And so I would like to identify that the numbers, although I recognize that they likely are very sticker shock to you, do not include a number of things that as a CPA and a nonprofit accountant, I would include, which includes the cost of all of the people you see in front of you today. This contract and the numbers that represent our per animal charge does not include any of the work that we do to support the whole shelter, including the work we do for the contract, as well as the work that we're doing in the community. In addition, the number that we are working to get to of 672 for 2027, I want to reiterate what Megan said in that is our per animal cost of care as of 2023. That is not our per animal cost of care as of right now, where we just experienced a 7% increase in labor over the course of the past year, and we are expecting to see at least an 8% increase in benefits for 2025, as well as another across the board, almost 3% increase for all of our labor. And so while I understand that the number is difficult, I do want to point out some of the things to identify that it is very conservative as far as the cost that we are experiencing right now. This is a catch-up to a year ago, and in 2027, it will improve vastly how much we're being compensated for the services that we're providing to the county, but it's not going to be full cost reimbursement. And so I thought that context might help a little bit.
Okay, thank you very much for that additional detail. I did want to make sure every counselor ask questions. And then Kathleen, I actually thought, since we had kind of the hue and cry raised by staff, that if there are questions by any staff that are on board, we should entertain that as well.
And
So
I do
back
have a
to the
question.
counselors. Karen, go ahead.
My question is, you have a commitment more or less to the other jurisdictions that we will match in the cost of, as to what they are paying in their new contracts. What specifically are they paying?
Well, they're paying the exact rates that that we are proposing. So the 493 and the 560 are the rates that all of the other jurisdictions have in their contracts. It's not that we made a commitment that you will pay this. It's that we made a commitment that these are the rates that we're charging. It's quite frankly up to Clark County if you guys want to choose to contract or not. We obviously value the contract. We want to keep the contract, but these are the rates that are being offered. That it is up to you if you want to continue the contract, essentially.
Yeah,
So
I understand that. So the rates that they are paying are $493 per animal for 2025 and $560 in 2026. And roughly, I don't know their quantity. I have absolutely no idea how many animals what is the total?
Give me 1 second. I have that.
Since you got the mic too.
I don't have every single contract that we have. I only brought what we charge City of Vancouver because it's the most comparable. The other smaller jurisdictions just are not. So what we have for City of Vancouver's future projection is $652,500 is their total charge for 2024. It goes up in 2026 to a little over $1 million. And that's based on their specific averages, their specific intake. So the number of intakes that we have for them year over year are different than Clark County. They're a little bit less. City of Vancouver's less than Clark County, so that's why those numbers are different.
Does the county pay for all strays, or is that divided up according to where the animal was picked up?
Oh, yeah. Everything is billed back to the jurisdiction where the animal was found. So if an animal was found inside the city limits of Vancouver, Battleground, Washougal, any of the other jurisdictions, it's billed directly to that jurisdiction, not to Clark County. The only animals that are billed to Clark County are those that are found in unincorporated Clark County.
What drives up the number of animals in Clark County compared to the city of Vancouver? Is it animals other than dogs and cats?
No, I wouldn't say that. I think it's just a matter of the population, the space, potentially less resources, less access to resources like spay neuter. So there's potentially just more animals in some of the more rural areas. It's hard to say. Yeah, I think it's a number of factors.
Did you want to say something?
Oh, wait.
Okay. Chair,
Please.
I have a few comments and questions. First, I just want to say thank you for the tour. I hadn't been out to your location. I was really impressed. I think it's the nicest shelter I've ever seen. And we've gotten barn cats from your site, so I appreciate that. And I recognize that this is probably awkward. I hope you're not feeling like you're being grilled, but I really appreciate your candor in having a give and take here. So I was wondering when you said releasing the cats that come in back to where they were found, is there spay and neuter before you really? Oh, good. Okay, just wanted to double check on that.
We vaccinate as well to protect and try to prevent disease in the community, and we also ear tip. So that way, if it's standard practice, that way if somebody sees an animal from a distance, because obviously a lot of these community cats you're not able to just go and pick up like a normal house cat, you can see visually from a distance that that animal has been altered because they have a visual ear tip.
We've seen that, yeah. You know, what you described, you know, we experience ourselves as far as the cost and labor and all of those things. So we're sympathetic to that. And I can imagine that there was not a direct policy decision that was made at some point that said, oh, we're going to provide 50% of what the cost is, that now is even getting greater. But then over time, it just happens. It would be good to see how much or what percentage of subsidy you figure you're still providing from the donations and things. Because it sounds like there's additional costs. Not all costs are included in here. Is that correct? Did I hear that correctly?
Yes, yes, in the proposed numbers.
Yes.
And I think the primary, the primary goal here is that while our costs continue to increase, we can't continue to have smaller increases to the contract and have that burden fall on larger increases in donations, because you can't ever exponentially increase something. And so I do think that the goal here, while there is, you know, a core goal of getting to full reimbursement, really our current goals for through 2027 are to, at the very least, level out the amount that we are subsidizing so that we are not consistently having to grow our development department to consistently bring in more and more donations. And Andrea and Megan can kind of correct me if that's an oversimplification, but that's kind of the current benchmark that we're looking for, is to just not subsidize more.
Right, right. And I can imagine that with the COVID years, I know for nonprofits, it absolutely affected their ability to fundraise. So I'm sure you experienced that as well. I think if there are ways to find efficiencies, you know, I think that was what we're all interested in, but I'd also just really recognize you're providing a very good service in our community, and I appreciate that.
Yeah. You know, I thought a lot about this for 4 years, and just know I am a nonprofit leader that considers himself more of a business-oriented leader. I think your team would tell you that we are constantly looking for efficiencies and ways to do more with less. We are, even in this number, we are doing more with less. Right. There really is not a lot more we can squeeze. We are probably 2 to 3 people short in all the key departments for the volume of animals we take in. If someone calls out sick, we are very short. We just have no extra room, and we are not overinflating our staff in these ways through animal care. So if I had a silver bullet to make it more efficient than we already are, trust me, I would. We are constantly looking at things that are within our control. Obviously, utilities and things like that are out of our control, other than we do always look at you know, cost-saving measures. Our lights are turned off automatically at a certain time. We have timers on all of our office lights. We have, we look for ways to ensure people aren't running water more than they need to. We are looking at those normal things you would do in a home or in a business anywhere. We're also looking constantly at the cost of goods. So we are always renegotiating contracts with our suppliers for drugs and vaccines. If a different you know, pharmaceutical company can offer us a better deal for the same type of product that we need, we will move and go to get that better deal. So know that we aren't sitting by just letting it happen to us. We are constantly looking for ways to get things cheaper or in bulk or whatever we need to do to be most cost effective. So if there was something else we could do, we would do it.
Okay, thank you.
Could I jump to April? I see April with a hand up.
Thank you, Chair. I just had a couple of questions. I know what we paid. So in 2021, we paid $348 to the Humane Society. 2022, we paid $502, and then 2023, $585. So, and I was looking through the report to see if you had a 68% jump in animals that you're taking in over those, because that's about what that is, I think, if I did my math right. But from 2021 to 2023, so is that the amount that intake has gone up for you? Or is that just for Clark County? Has Clark County's intake just gone up 68%? And then the second question I had, that I didn't see in the report, and I also value our partnership, and I've also toured the facility and have adopted animals from the facility. But the other thing that I didn't see in there is there's a fee that you charge for adopting. So when we talk about donor subsidy, is the fee that you charge for adopting also considered part of the monies to go to the care of the animals that are brought in?
I guess we'll break it up into both of those questions. Do you want to take
Go ahead and take the numbers.
Okay. So I think, let me know if what I'm saying is what you're asking, April. So you're asking about the jump in numbers. So I'm looking at your 2023 numbers. So yes, there is a jump that I'm seeing from 2022 to 2023, for example, in dogs. You had 613 was the 2023 number. The prior year was only 493. So yes, there was a jump there. It looks like in 2023, we actually took a few less cats than 2022. So 1,400 versus 1,021. There doesn't necessarily seem to be a total intake jump. It's actually from 2023 was a little bit less than 22. But there's just a lot of variance. So that's why we took, because then, in the year before, we took a lot more. So there's a lot of variation in the numbers. That's why we took a 3-year average for these numbers. So we took 21 to 23 average for each of the groups. So we took the average for dogs, average for cats, average for rabbits, other wildlife DOA, and then that's how we received these projections for your 2025 to 27 proposal. There's only a 10% increase in cats because that's what we've been seeing. Does that answer your question?
Yes, for the most part, yes. I mean, my thing, because the discussion that we've been having has sounded like, that I just don't want it to be thought that what we've been paying is stagnant, because it hasn't been. It's increased exponentially over the last 3 years. So I was just wondering.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just wondering if we had a cause of why that happened. Like, and
so
if
I hear what you're saying. I hear what you're saying in terms of total charges have gone up, but that's because your animal projection, like your animal totals have gone up. The per animal charge has only gone up between $5 and $15 when our average increase year over year of what it has cost us to do this work and to take in each of those animals has gone up $71.50 each year. So it is stagnant given that the increases that we're seeing in terms of the labor, so the Washington State minimum wage increase, all of the supplies, everything, the benefits for staff, everything it's costing us to provide the same level of service is costing us a lot more than what how the rates are being increased, which again is $5 or $15. So yes, the total charge has gone up, but that's all based on the number of animals that are brought in, not based on the number that you're paying per animal, because that has stayed relatively low.
Right. And that was my point. That was basically, it's the Humane Society seeing that jump, because that's what that says to me. My numbers say that I must have increased the amount of animals that are being brought in from Clark County. And I was just wondering if that is a trend overall for the Humane Society. Exactly.
In cats, yes, it is. And particularly with dogs last year for Clark County, yes.
Any additional questions? I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, Chair Mevaji, I do have some, but I think there was a second part to April's question regarding the adoption fees, if that's included in cost of care. The cost to run our adoption program is not included in the cost of care.
Councilor Young.
Yeah, and before I go, Chair Mevajay, I think Councilor Young had a question too. I want to be respectful of council.
Go ahead, Kathleen. Go ahead. I'll ask after.
Okay, so I just wanted to clarify, on the contract, there's zero flexibility in the amount, so it's an all or nothing from your perspective?
Correct.
Okay. And because I know that we have found some hiccups in the billing accuracy, so what systems have you guys put in place to ensure that we're actually getting billed for the animals that are in unincorporated Clark County? And how, because I know we were overbilled after we were auditing those. So can you?
We're overbilled and underbilled, both. So we have put a lot of systems in place in terms of auditing. So you can probably talk a little bit more about this. I can kind of give a brief synopsis. So there's several different auditing systems in place. So one is a daily auditing that our admissions specialists do on their own. So anybody who's taken in an animal that day audits their own work. Then the supervisor or manager then audits every week the total of intakes that came in to make sure that those jurisdictions are accurately reflected in each animal profile. And then there's, again, another audit that's done by another manager supervisor before the bill is then transferred over to finance team.
Is that a new process since the
last 2 years?
Was it a new process after the $75,000 overcharge? We beefed up the process because we were finding a few gaps. We did a lot of education with our staff, but we have enhanced that process since that happened. Yeah. Okay.
There were animals that were on your bill that you're referring to that were actually City of Vancouver, some of the others, but then there were other animals that were also in other jurisdictions that we did not then go back and bill Clark County for.
Yeah, so it sounds like it may have been an issue, not just with us then, with accuracy with billing.
That happened during COVID. This is a couple of years ago that you're referring to. So we've done a lot to, like Andrea said, beef up our auditing process to ensure that that does not happen. With obviously accuracy of jurisdiction is really important. So all of those auditing systems will stay in place. But in terms of billing, that's another piece too that makes it so just time consuming because, we're still waiting on payment from July from the county because we're waiting on the county to do the auditing process. So, all of these things are taking a lot of time on both ends. So moving to this flat fee contract will, I think, really help both ends on the admin cost.
And are you open to having the county sit down and actually take a deep dive into the budget and the reports and the allocations so that we can and have access to that information?
I think we've been pretty transparent with our budget right now. We've provided all of that information. In terms of the audit of the jurisdiction coding, is that what you're referring to?
We'll look at the budget, just to see, okay, this is the cost of care. Here's each line item. Here's how we're spending it on caps. Here's the, because I haven't seen anything, and I believe that we have been asking for that, and there's been a little bit of a reluctance, and I think that helps show us as well the first. Go ahead.
The first time we were asked was from Councilor Medzicki. Chair Medzicki was the first time that we had ever been asked.
Did our Animal Control Board ask for any specific data as well?
I believe that there was someone from the board that asked. However, our contract relationship is with you.
Okay, so you're open then to sitting down and opening up everything for us?
We are open to it. We provided it all with you.
Did you receive the packet
today
that we sent on Thursday?
Yeah, and there were still additional questions I had after seeing the packet.
I guess there's nothing we're hiding. We will be as transparent as you want us to be. I guess what I would say is if you were to hire a janitorial service or another organization to provide a service for you, would you ask that private organization to go through their books?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and we have, because it's important from my perspective, because this is taxpayer dollars. We have an obligation to ensure that we're managing our contracts, to the highest level. So yes, that is a common occurrence that we do with our contractors. And then my final just recommendation for council for today, we are scheduling another work session with our Animal Control Advisory Board as well. And after that discussion, that's when I would recommend council provide direction to
our staff with regards to negotiating this contract. Because today was just for Humane Society, we'll do animal control, and then we'll bring the staff back. I mean, certainly we have staff on board that can answer some questions today, but I would wait for any direction until then.
Thank you, Kathleen. I was going to end. No, I just want to make sure all the counselors had all their questions asked. You know, when I first met with the Humane Society with this issue, the first thing we discussed, I kind of interrupted the tour and just talked about the need potentially to have our county auditor take a hard look at the books. And just generally speaking, we in my personal experience, we have been very challenged. Contract administration across the board in all of our contracts. And it starts with legal review, which isn't always substantive, but just pro forma, to actually administering contracts during the duration of the contract. Excuse me. There have been so many that we have been taken to the cleaners on. And that's really unfortunate because it's taxpayer money. So we do have, we have beefed up our contract administration. But we also who's there so that we can do our due diligence with taxpayer money. And so during my initial meeting with the Humane Society, as tough as the conversation was, I've seen nothing but transparency and a willingness to participate in answering any of these financial questions that an audit may want to ask. Because we can't take the contractor at face value, no matter what the contract is, because everyone says they're doing it at least cost and most efficient. Know that. Sometimes it's a fresh look by an auditor can find additional efficiencies. It's in everyone's best interest. So anyway, I just wanted to add one other thing. We have no plan. I mean, we can't, we have to provide these services. There is no transitional plan to have animal control take this over or some other entity. I mean, we basically are a captive audience at this point. We have no transition plan to move away from this, nor do I have any confidence that the county could do it any better or cheaper. So anyway, I just wanted to get back to that pragmatic point of view. We just need to do the best we can to keep costs down for our taxpayers, yet provide the very best care for our wildlife and domestic animal population out there. So we do need to kind of conclude this because we have another work session. Are there any last questions? Glenn, I saw your mic light up. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I had, first of all, a few comments. Thank you for the tour. It was very enlightening. And, you know, as I went through there, I had good feelings about the organization. I could see people were busybodies. It was clean. It was organized. So nothing but kudos there on that. You're doing a great job, and you're filling a role that is desperately needed in the community that otherwise would not be filled. So I appreciate all the work that you do. You know, our job is to be good stewards of the taxpayer funds. And we're also in an upcoming budget cycle where there's going to be, our revenue is not increasing, just like you. Our revenue is not increasing at the level that our services being provided are costing us. So we are in a challenging situation, and any extra dollar we spend on X means one extra dollar less that we're spending on something else that is a very much needed service in the community. So that being said, I give you credit for doing smart things, like, you know, looking at the building, you've got maintenance and things like that. And the services that you are providing for the county impact the building, you know, so it is a responsible thing for us to contribute towards those things. The thing that I would ask for is if we can have county staff just take a look at those numbers and how you've built those. You know, what percentages of the building, what percentages of this service, and just, you know, to get a better understanding and for the purpose of just ensuring we're in a really uncomfortable situation here. I do not like being in a situation where we only have one option. And I'm not saying that you guys are bad. You guys are wonderful and great. But it creates an extra level that we have to really be prudent and make sure that the tax dollars are being spent correctly when we don't have any form of competition to ensure that the price is reflecting, you know, the true market rate of services. So I hope that makes sense. What I'm hoping is that you'd be willing, perhaps you've already provided that. But, you know, if our staff asks for, you know, how did you come to this specific figure? You know, what percentage and how did you determine, you know, the amount of the impact that's as part of our contract versus the amount of impact versus your adoption, you know, category, things like that. If you'd be willing to share that, I think that would go a long ways. So thank you for the work you do. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Glenn.
Chair, I just have one.
Go ahead, please.
I just have a class question. You had mentioned what sounds like a delay in payment from July, and I just wanted to follow up with that, if that's kind of
a couple of outstanding invoices. So one is about 45 days past, is it past due?
Yeah,
or
July is 45 days.
We also have another that I actually emailed April about this morning. We've been trying to track down for the past several months. This was, I believe it was some forensic work that was requested by animal control officers that we provided. So if we have to do blood work, we get a bill from a company that we use called IDEX. Well, then we send that bill to Clark County for that specific request for blood work or whatever it might be. This was on the Husky case. And so I think Donna had a little bit of confusion on which was who, because some of them came in from Clark County, some of them came from City of Vancouver. Once we cleared up that, yes, what we are billing you for is accurate, and she agreed with that, we still haven't heard anything after that. So that's been significantly past due. I think these were March.
Yeah, they're over 90 days.
So maybe we could follow up with that.
April's on, so she can follow up with that. Great.
Yeah, so thanks for bringing that up.
I actually have one little comment. I was waiting for everyone else to. Okay. So I am a board member, a donor, and a taxpayer. So I really do appreciate what you guys are going through to make sure that everything is paid accordingly and that you guys are, as the council, are getting the best bang for your buck. I appreciate that. I'm also a business owner on the finance committee. And so on the board, we have kind of the same discussion, like why is it that we're subsidizing the counties? And so we task everyone here as employees with the same type of thing. Let's make sure that we're getting the contracts where they need to be, because we're subsidizing and the donors are subsidizing. So we are stewards of our donors' money, and that's, you know, the donors, I think, question that as well. So as a board member, that is a concern that we continue to subsidize so much of the county's bill. That's where kind of that comes from. One other thing too is I think one way to keep these costs down is to keep the number of surrenders or number of animal control cases down. And I feel like as long as I've been on the board, which is about 8 years, the last couple of years, we have done a phenomenal job as a organization doing some preventative work, and that mobile vet clinic and the low-cost clinic that Andrea speaks about, that's going to keep those numbers down by keeping those animals at home with their people. So I just kind of wanted to give a perspective from a board member, how we feel on the other side as well. So thank you. Thank you for that.
Thank you for that. So anything else? Otherwise, Kathleen, I think you've identified the next steps as far as hearing from animal control, as well as a potential audit of some form, just to solidify there's to pay. Is there anything else, Kathleen, that you would ask or identify as the next step?
Now, just after that, then we'll
council will reconvene and have a discussion with April and her staff regarding the contract, what your direction is on that. So,
Okay,
but no,
thank you. So
thank you.
my thanks again to your presentation today and all that you do for the community. It is a premier facility, and we are doing the very best. And others are looking to us as an example for best practices in the community. So thank you for the great work you're doing. We'll go ahead and conclude this work session and then start the recording for the next.